Good day. AJ Mahar here. In this video, I wanted to talk about this notion again being discussed everywhere online, but also here on some of my videos, that people with BPD really do love. Well, if they have active, what I call, if they're in the active throes, as I've called it, really actively ensconced in the borderline personality disorder traits and difficulties, and or are untreated still, then I would ask you to think about it this way. How can a person with this relational disorder, which is really borderline personality disorder, is a relational disorder, relating is where all the difficulties occur, or primarily a great majority of them. So if a person doesn't know who they are, and they've experienced emotional arrested development, usually by the age of 2, that means they don't go on to grow through the early stages of childhood like other children would. That then in adulthood could, nobody loves perfectly, but could be more personifying and acting out of and showing healthy love in their lives to an intimate other or anyone in the world, or like a friend or family member, what have you. And so people with borderline personality disorder not having a sense of self, a sense of self-trust, a belief in oneself, having just so many things emotionally arrested at a young age, leaves them needing to repair that in adulthood. I mean, that's a big part of what recovery from borderline personality disorder is all about. And so I liked what I'm sorry that I didn't look up the videos and who said what, but someone commented on one of my videos about, I think it was either BPD and splitting or how the cycle ends, or explanation about BPD, or anyway, I'm sorry, I don't really remember which video of mine it was, but thought the comment was really a really good one. When a person said, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name and I can't find the video at the moment, the person said that maybe these people that are, quote, non-borderline or borderline loved ones or BPD loved ones, who still think that the person with BPD can love them or is loving them or is trying to love them, that this commenter said perhaps they're just not ready yet to realize that that's really not what's happening, really not what they're receiving. And I thought that was a really good way, a really important part of this conversation around how to understand what I've been trying to say for years about why people who are in the active throes, actively having borderline personality disorder, struggling with all those issues and traits, or because they are just getting some help, or because they're untreated. So whether or not a BPD loved one is ready to admit this to themselves, understand it, or will ever agree with it for that matter, is only germane to each and every BPD loved one. That, whether or not you want to continue to suffer, perhaps be traumatized, certainly get confused, be hurt, lose yourself potentially, can affect your mental and physical health. It's really important to realize that there is a wide, clear definition between what is healthy love, reasonable adult healthy love in any capacity or type of relationship, especially intimate other, and what is toxic love, or the absence of really what it could be considered love. And so many people from their own childhoods don't really know what healthy love is still, and or yet, or how to receive it, or even if you're learning more about love, I'm talking about people who don't even have a personality disorder, even if you're learning about love more, you don't know how to receive it or maybe how to give it exactly, because one needs to be, and especially with borderline personality disorder, people with borderline personality disorder, one needs to know oneself, one needs to love oneself, one needs to like oneself, esteem oneself, and have boundaries, emotional boundaries, in order to truly be able to consistently, in an adult, healthy way, love someone. Not only a partner, but a child, a sibling, some other family member, friend. You know, healthy love, and I know I said this in another video, some people really didn't like it, but M. Scott Peck said that healthy love is, or love is, hard work and honesty. Honesty is crucial. And people with borderline personality disorder, not that they always want to be dishonest, but they don't know how to be honest with themselves because they're struggling within themselves with a lack of self. And we won't even touch what excuse me, narcissists do with that. Because nothing is about love for narcissists. It's about supply. But getting back to people, who are the loved ones of primarily people with borderline personality disorder in this video, but it applies to those who are loved ones of those with, narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder, even mid-range, that there can be love at times, maybe in some instances, but that it's going to be by the very hot, cold, off, on, present, absent nature of it. It is so incongruent, inconsistent, unpredictable, that doesn't qualify as healthy love. Like moments of it, or a day of it, or 3 weeks of it, or a month of it, and then not. Because love, as M. Scott Peck puts it, is hard work and honesty. And there are other definitions out there, and I'm sure maybe some are more in tune with giving you more of a feeling for love than maybe hard work and honesty as a definition of healthy love does. But what I really like about the way M. Scott Peck, hard work and honesty, 4 words to describe love, there's much more to be said about love. But without honesty, there isn't healthy love. Healthy love requires mutuality and reciprocity, and respect always, the absence of abuse always, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, just even pushing too hard for your own way. Respect is another key thing. And not just respect when somebody agrees with you, or respect when you're getting your way, or respect for whatever reason on a given day, but respect consistently, that people can count on from you, and you should also receive that. That's healthy love. And so the hard work part of M. Scott's definition, I believe, is just that, like in any relationship, let alone one where one person has borderline personality disorder, and this can change if they get treatment, effective treatment, and help and do the work. So can it for less often, but someone who has some narcissistic traits, or narcissism that is what I call, maybe someone else said it before me, I don't know, but mid-range. So before it gets to a certain level where that person has no self-awareness, or no want or ability to look at themselves in some ways and reflect. And so even if someone can do that, and they might not be reflecting in a way that is giving them accurate information about a situation with someone else, that still shows they have the capability to do the work to really heal this if they want to. And I'm talking mid-range narcissism there as well, or a few narcissistic traits, as well as, BPD, or a few BPD traits. But my point is, the hard work part of M. Scott Peck's definition of love, hard work and honesty, all relationships are hard work. Anything in life that's really important that we do has an element of hard work to it. It doesn't have to feel like hard work all the time if we're flowing with that, and if we really meet that with a consistent competency, emotional mastery. But until one can do that, then it's a little bit more bumpy and a little bit more, or maybe vastly inconsistent, or a little more inconsistent. But that doesn't mean that people can't change that and heal that and learn how to love healthily and be loved healthily with mutuality and reciprocity. So I think it's really important for people who are the loved ones of those with BPD or mid-range NPD. You have to really look at this in a realistic way. And it's hard to deal with feelings in a, thought-based way of rationality, but it's really important to look at the cognitive dissonance between where is there hope in someone to change and to show you a healthier brand of love and return if you're giving them healthy love and they're giving you back the absence of that, or toxic love, or what's really not love at all, more often than not, if not entirely, then you have to look at what's that mean for you and how wounding is that for you? How much trauma, how much pain is that causing you? And it's not healthy for people to be treated that way, for that absence of love to be there. And then the cognitive dissonance comes. And then the idea of, well, maybe they'll change. I'll change them. I'll fix them. I'll help them. I'll rescue them. I'll get them to therapy. And when I say, I mean get them to therapy, whether it's a he or she. The point is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And, if I stick with a horse metaphor, not that I know much about horses, if you were trying to get a horse to run a race for you, but it just wouldn't do more than trot, what would you really do to make that change? You can't really make that horse run if it doesn't want to run. I mean, I would imagine. I know people can whip them in the butt with whatever those things are called, and they might run for a time, but to run around in a race, to get trained, not every horse is going to be okay for that. So there's something going on with the horse in that case, we could say. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can't change anybody but yourself. And how painful it is, I know. And I have great empathy for anyone facing this right now. That you love someone with borderline personality disorder, or that you love someone with some traits of BPD that are pretty pronounced at the moment, or traits of NPD, or mid-range NPD, or just barely maybe, would meet the criteria for the diagnosis of NPD, or maybe would just be under that. Mid-range narcissism. And what that does to love, healthy love, and how they also, mid-range narcissists, or of course beyond that, don't know love at all. And what is really the key, I think, let's not look at other people's definitions, let's just look at something that's really important here in trying to ascertain whether something is healthy or toxic, whether love is there and love is healthy, or it's toxic, in which case healthy love is absent. And we can tell that by whether or not one is comfortable in their vulnerability. It's easy to be strong when you feel empowered. It's easy to be strong when you feel in control. It's easy to be strong when you think you're right, or others agree that you're right. But it's more challenging to be empowered when you're hurt or vulnerable, or there's some aspect of human weakness we all have. Weakness is maybe not the right word, but human vulnerability. We all have vulnerabilities. We are all human. We are not perfect. How do we, it's the dealing with vulnerability, which leads to the ability to have intimacy with one's own self and then others, emotionally. And in other ways, but emotionally I'm speaking of. That if one can't be vulnerable because one is protecting, or one never got through the early stages of childhood development, or one got really wounded in childhood, it's not the stuff that makes monsters. I mean, not to the level I'm talking about in this video. This is the kind of thing that wounds people and hurts them as much as it hurts others. And that doesn't make it right that they hurt, and doesn't make it right that they hurt others. But vulnerability, the degree to which one can or cannot feel secure, their own sense of self-esteem and sense, empowerment, and vulnerability simultaneously. That is so key to whether one can love healthily, love age appropriately, love as a mature adult emotionally or not. Because people with even traits of BPD or traits of NPD, or just meeting the diagnosis, or people with BPD in general, but people with NPD up to a certain point, mid-range, and that mid-range point varies across many individuals. It's not like you could say it's boom right here or boom right here. These people have to protect against a woundedness that has decimated their ability or sense of any safety to be vulnerable, to not be seen as right, to not be agreed with, to feel so easily, quickly, even if someone else isn't doing it to them, or giving them the experience they're about to triggered in a triggered way feel of rejection or abandonment, or because for mid-range narcissists and for people with borderline personality disorder, and in different ways, by the way, when they're not agreed with, or when they feel that someone thinks they're wrong, it becomes a black and white thing. So if you disagree with something that someone who's a mid-range narcissist, or has narcissistic traits, or BPD traits, or has borderline personality disorder, when you disagree with them, they feel, well, in narcissism it's a little different how the reaction comes, but the sense is, the perception, the misperception is, that if you don't agree with what I just said about this, and it's the subconscious in people with BPD and mid-range NPD, then you're not agreeing with me as a human being. You don't value me if you disagree with what I just said. You don't value me. This is what people with borderline personality disorder and or traits of, and mid-range narcissistic personality disorder or traits of, really misperceive in a black and white way. If you disagree with them on a point or an emotional aspect of something you're relating about, or if they've done something that's a little bit, well, not considered appropriate conduct or behavior, I don't want to use the words right and wrong, then they feel like if you're telling, well, I could say it this way, they feel like if you're telling them that they did something wrong, or something less than appropriate, that you're telling them that they are totally wrong, that they are totally worthless, that they are totally being rejected. That's how they perceive it. And if they can gain self-awareness of that and start to parse this out, separate the fact that how one could disagree with somebody or not think someone's right about something, or that their behavior wasn't outstanding over here with regard to this, doesn't mean an across-the-board rejection, abandonment, betrayal, dislike, hatred, or lack of love for someone. So it's a very complex subject, but I thought the commenter who said that a lot of people who still think they're being loved by these wounded individuals with BPD or mid-range narcissism, or way down the spectrum, malignant narcissism, psychopathy, where we know there's no love, they're not capable of love at all, people still feel like they're loved. How can that be? And I think that's where people need to start asking themselves that question more than I need to try to, tell you why, because I think each individual comes to this understanding on their own anyway, when they're ready and when they're able. And so I just really thought that comment by the commenter, and you know who you are, and I wish I could remember your name and which video, that people, just loved ones, or maybe somebody with BPD or a few narcissistic traits or whatever the case, are not able or ready to understand and really realize what is happening isn't healthy love, and that there are problems and or some abusive things happening that take away from what could be healthy love. That abuse is not love. But that doesn't mean that somebody who can sometimes be abusive verbally or emotionally doesn't have love for a person at other times. But then what is the quality of that love? How healthy is it or not? Is it coming and going all the time? And, want to look at this in a way, too, where it's not about running these people down into the ground or saying they have no worth or they're not, people that are worth loving, and people that do good things in their lives too, positive things. Love people, maybe like taking care of their children, but then sometimes really just having a difficulty from childhood or the woundedness of a few narcissistic traits or BPD traits or mid-range narcissism or borderline personality disorder, and then getting to a point where they just get so frustrated that they start yelling, and they are feeling so hurt and are so incapable of, and I mean incapable like in a gentle way, of emotionally dealing with the vulnerability of what they're experiencing in a given moment. So it's really important to know that if one is self-aware and one wants to change, and one wants to reach for healthier love, and one has not known a lot of healthy love in their life, and maybe reflected some, but not consistently, or without having issues of being triggered, or feeling like if someone says that you're not correct in a certain point, or what you're doing here because it's a little abusive verbally, means that you're all wrong or you're all terrible. That's certainly not what I'm saying. And I think it's really important to separate out those things and understand that traits that people struggle with, whether they meet a personality disorder or they don't, and mid-range in narcissism, just to stress again, then traits are things that we all have, human traits. And so these are things that we may still need to learn. Some people still need to learn, to work on, to grow, to heal. That doesn't mean that somebody is trying to tell that person that they're a horrible person or unretrievable within the parameters I've given in this video, right? Because unfortunately, malignant narcissists and psychopaths kind of are irretrievable right now. But that's not everybody with narcissistic traits or narcissism to a certain point. And not everybody with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder, BPD traits or borderline personality disorder, not everybody is the same. It is a spectrum. And we will see at one end a whole lot of impossibility and no love and a lot of abuse. And we will see at the other end, so, maybe the opposite, maybe like not even being that relational and a whole other level of difficulty. And then we can see in the middle, there are so many people, so individual to each person, that do love their kids, for example, but could still find themselves raging at their kids sometimes. And whether or not regret that after, may have trouble with the vulnerability of apology, or whatever the case may be, because of how they just haven't actually healed something from their past, And there's more they need to learn on why that's happening in the first place. And so for loved ones of people with traits of BPD or NPD, or who meet the diagnosis of either of those personality disorders, and with narcissism to mid-range only, there is possibility of change, but I want to also stress that it's not a high majority of people with these issues that want to really get help and stay with the process and really heal, or know how to actually, because it's very difficult and painful at times. But there are people who do. But then for loved ones, you need to look at what you're going through right now today, and not what if, or have what becomes false hope that will keep you stuck in a situation where you might need to make a decision now to move forward and not wait to see if they're gonna get help or not. That's the really hard part. But anyway, so that's my response again to some responses to videos I've made about BPD, and BPD people don't love, and narcissistic people don't love, and people with some narcissistic traits may know love but struggle with love. Because underlying love, and anybody's definition of love, I believe, I don't know because I'm not looking them all up right now, would be the ability to, first of all, know yourself, like and love yourself, care about yourself, but also to be able to cope with vulnerability and not need to defend against making a mistake, or even making maybe a bigger mistake than a little mistake, but knowing that that mistake doesn't define you unless you let it. And so many people with traits of these two personality disorders, or with the personality disorders, and again with narcissism to mid-range, they don't know, they are protected, so protected because they were so wounded, that they don't know how to be vulnerable, how to really be empowered in their vulnerability. That vulnerability is really a strength and not a weakness. Because when you're a young child and you're really hurt, and you're not given the care, and your needs aren't met the way they need to be met, you do not learn anything safe about vulnerability. Because children, we all begin life as children who are vulnerable. And if that vulnerability is met with a lot of abuse or neglect, abandonment, rejection, not having our needs met, even if that's perceived or actual in cluster B personality disordered individuals, then people just keep defending more and more and more against what hurt, and they get further and further away from, they're blocking themselves totally out of their own vulnerability because it's too painful to go there. And that's a lot of what the work is in change too, to go from toxic love to healthy love. But at the same time I'm saying this, I don't want loved ones to overhope for a certain individual in your life that might not be someone who's getting help or wanting to change. Many people are and will. But how do you know the difference? And I don't know if I can do a video on that, because when I have clients, I can see the difference after I get to know them a bit. But I'm not sure how you would see that difference in whether or not someone's going to therapy. Because even if they go to therapy, they might not be engaging the therapy. They might be blocking and defending that super wounded vulnerability, which is a tremendous obstacle in the mid-range area and of narcissism and in borderline personality disorder. So if a cognitive dissonance gets in the way of you loved ones trying to figure out if there is healthy love, or if there are signs of what could be healthy change. So it's a really complicated issue, and I decided to take another stab at talking about it, for you to think about it. And if you believe that somebody who isn't getting help with mid-range narcissism or traits of narcissism, or traits of BPD or borderline personality disorder loves you, and yet there's all that conflict and all the triggers and all the dysregulated emotion and rage or silent treatment and punishment, do you think maybe you could benefit from revisiting whether or not that's actually healthy love? Because it isn't. But if you're still believing it is, then you need to ask yourself, what is it you're afraid of? What is it that, this might be representing loss to you if you think about it. And then so are you ready for that? Are you able to cope with a loss? Do you know how to put yourself first in that case, which is not narcissistic, and to love yourself enough to know that you're worthy of healthy love? Because toxic love is not anything that anybody wants to give or receive. But that's about human brokenness and woundedness. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. It's a difficult subject, and I think the commenter was really right that people, loved ones, will get it when they're ready to get it, and maybe can't get it at all. In other words, admitting that this isn't healthy love, or the person really can't love them, isn't meeting them with mutuality and reciprocity and vulnerability and emotional openness and flexibility. Really hard to want to recognize that until you're ready to realize that that's going to mean loss for you. But that loss, that grieving, perhaps the end of that relationship in time and your healing will bring to you an ability to be with others, whether it's a significant other or other people in your life or friends, or to be with others in your life, recognize from those who would treat you less than healthily, or who are unable to love in a healthy way. So it's each person's journey, on both sides of this, whether they have a cluster B personality disorder or not, whether you're the loved one or someone who does. Everybody has to kind of do their own work to come to the realization of what's really true for you. And the realization of what's really true for you will be a really painful one when you're ready to go there, when you open to that. And so that's when people need to seek help too, because you really need to be able to experience your pain being witnessed and empathized with, and working through the cognitive dissonance, and then looking at what was it in your past experience or childhood, that it doesn't always have to be a horrible situation. It just, something was missing or you got hurt. Lots of people get through childhood woundedness with resiliency and don't develop a personality disorder or any other mental health issue. But we're always looking for more balance in our lives. And what I'll be talking more about here too, emotional mastery, and why that's so important, as well as neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and what that offers in the healing process. For I think those with mid-range narcissism, narcissistic traits, borderline personality, BPD traits, and also those who've been wounded, hurt, traumatized, or lost themselves to the pain and the experience of having been abused and traumatized by somebody with a cluster B personality disorder or someone with some other mental health challenge. So it's really important to think about this and to know that love is what it is. But the word in culture, movies, music, the word love is so misused, misappropriated, exaggerated. I mean, most movies celebrate codependent love, for example, as do songs, more than healthy love. And then there are so many movies or scenes in movies or songs or things in culture that kind of teach us the absolute wrong thing about love. And in a 90-minute movie or a half-hour TV show or an hour TV show, they always tend to work out things somehow, don't they? But life doesn't work like that. And sometimes things take longer, and sometimes things just aren't there. So maybe it would be helpful for you if this resonates with you, and if you've been with somebody or you are with somebody that you love who has BPD or traits, or NPD, mid-range, or traits, and you're not sure what's going on, and it's not mutual and reciprocal, and you are hurting and getting traumatized, maybe look up, Google what is healthy love, definitions, and look at a lot of quotes. I mean, I'm just using Scott M. Peck's, or M. Scott Peck's, because it's very sort of, it's not wordy, it's not flowery, it's not meant to be emotional. It's just really a logical reality about what love is, what healthy love is. Honesty and hard work. And by the way, all relationships require work. We don't always have to feel like it's hard, but sometimes it is hard. And so even our relationships with ourselves require work over the course of a lifetime. Personal development, personal growth, emotional mastery. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, even with ourselves. So wherever you are right now, however this subject may be germane in your life and affecting your life, it's really important to know that you have all the capacity to make, and if you have borderline personality or narcissistic traits or mid-range narcissism, you too have the ability to think about this and find some self-awareness and be able to get into a process of healing, so that what is compromising your ability to be vulnerable and safe with that, and some misperceptions you may be carrying from childhood woundedness, you too can heal and be that loving, giving, and receiving person that doesn't have to sometimes feel shame or rejected or fear rejection or re-experience your past woundedness over and over again. So take the best care you can now.